Welcome back. We're in Chapter 23, Quiz A, question number 2. Take a minute and please make sure this data has been entered into your calculator in List 1. A professor at a large university believes that the students take an average of 15 credit hours per term. A random sample of 24 students in her class of 250 students reported the following number of credit hours that they were taking. Find a 95% confidence interval for the number of credit hours taken by the students in the professor's class. Interpret your interval. In question number 1, we checked all the conditions for inference, and we determined that all conditions for inference were met. Okay, and since all the conditions were satisfied in question 1, we can find a t interval for the mean number of credit hours. Just a reminder, the general form of all confidence intervals is estimate plus or minus margin of error. We also found in prompt 1 that our sample size was 24, our sample mean was 16.625, and the standard deviation of our sample was 0.453. So let's take a look at the formula of our confidence interval. Here's our estimate, our sample mean, plus or minus our critical t times the standard deviation of our statistic. Well, how do we find this critical t value? Well, let's take a look at a graph of a normal model with a 95% confidence interval. So here we go. The critical t value would be this upper limit right here. If this was our upper limit, what percent of the curve, or what area under the curve, would be covered? Well, from here, it would be 95% plus this additional 2.5%. So the total area under the curve, if this is our critical t value, would be 95 plus 2.5, or 97.5% of the curve would be covered for this critical t value. So we're going to go to our calculator. We're going to go to our distribution menu, and we're going to arrow down to inverse t, because we have area under the curve and we're trying to find a t value. So our area is 97.5% of the curve, or 0.975. We have 23 degrees of freedom. Our degrees of freedom is always n minus 1. And when we click enter, our calculator tells us that the critical t value for a 95% confidence interval is roughly 2.069. So that's going to be our critical t value right here that we're going to plug in. So we have the sample mean, which is 16.625. We have our critical t value for a 95% confidence interval of 2.069. And we have the standard deviation of our sample statistic, which is 0.453. So we're going to plug it in. And when we do that, here we go. We have our sample mean plus or minus our critical t times the standard deviation of our statistic. We get 16.625 plus or minus 0.938, which gives us a confidence interval of 15.7 to approximately 17.6. Now we need to interpret our interval. We are 95% confident that the students are taking between 15.7 and 17.6 credit hours on average. Since 15 is not in our confidence interval, this confirms our findings in question 1 that the professor's students are taking more than 15 credit hours on average. And our last step is just to confirm our findings in our calculator. So please click your Stat button, arrow over to the Test menu, and we know that this is called a t interval. That's the name of this test. So let's arrow down until we see t interval. It's prompt number 8 for me. What? Okay, here we go. Let's see. This always happens. Our data is located in list 1. Our confidence level is 95%. And when we hit calculate, we in fact get the same confidence interval we got over here, 15.7 to 17.6. Okay, that's it. See you next time.